Hello, everyone. Welcome you all, ladies, gentlemen, to the best and newest episode of TrueTalks brought to you by Trueplay. I have the honored chance and opportunity to host my dear friend Édi here on this episode where we're going to go in a deep dive inside the LATAM Brazilian market and try to give up some secrets of the trade while I did. Édi, welcome, my friend.
Thank you very much, guys. Felipe, my good friend, always good to see you. Thank you for having me, and let's get into it.
Of course, of course. But before that, I'm sure that's going to be a really funny story behind this. So I have one question. How did you actually fall into the iGaming industry? What happened that got you here on the first job?
Well, like I always like to say, because it's something that I look back and sometimes I don't even believe in it. I do believe that my personality found iGaming because it's a very funny story. I was looking for a job. I was in my early 20s. I already had a few years living in Bulgaria. By the way, I live in Bulgaria, Sofia, for the last 18 years. And I saw this job advert that really resonated with me. You know, at the time it was with PaySafe. The role was VIP account manager, and I saw everything that really resonates. I saw people communication, I saw setting right expectations, I saw meeting people personally, and it was really something that was for me, for my personality. And long story short, I went to the interview. I was super nervous, like it was the first interview of my life. And I even asked the recruiter in the end, how many people have applied? She told me, wow, more than 100, even people from abroad. So when I left the interview, and mind you, this is the time before, this is way before the pandemic, interviews were personally based, you know, like you would go and sit and talk to people. So I left very sad, you know, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe this is not my job. Long story short, I got hired. I was super, super happy. And yeah, my journey started there.
Yeah, I
Specifically
knew
there,
I knew there was some good story behind it, of course, as always.
just to give you a little bit of that background, I was the VIP account manager for e-wallets for Skrill and NetTeller for different locations from Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg to Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. So my portfolio was very wide in terms of diversity, and we were talking of we're talking about a very specific profile of players. We're
Hmm.
talking about professional poker players, professional affiliate gamblers, so on and so forth. So it was very, very exciting to enter iGaming already, you know, with a huge range of different personalities and different ways of doing business. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
my
amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And so at least when I look at your resume and know you, you basically sat on almost every side of the table in the industry. You've been to payments, operator side, platforms, suppliers, almost everywhere. From those places, which one or which side of industry has teach you more things in your experience?
That's a good question. It makes me think. The thing is, every single place on the table made me learn something different, from how to approach business, from how to approach people, from how to approach internally, you know, how you liaise with other departments in order to deliver. So in every single company and in every single role, in every single sub vertical, taught me something different on how to manage myself, how to manage expectations internally and externally. I wouldn't be Eddie today without every single seat that I occupied in
Fair
that
enough.
big table. Yeah.
Fair enough. Me myself, I'm in this mixed background, so I completely relate. There's always something good to take, even from the worst jobs. That's part
Yeah.
of life. And have you ever started since your early career? Did you started focusing on Latam, or that something that just came naturally over the years? The
That
focus in
came
Brazil, focus
naturally
on Latam.
that came naturally due to my heritage, to the languages that I speak. Initially it was Europe as where I was based, you know, English being the main business language. So I started with that, and eventually iGaming started expanding, and then needs started to fall more into Brazil and Latin America, and I started finding my footing in place throughout the map. Let's put it that way.
Of course, we have Brazil, we have samba, we have caipirinhas.
Indeed,
Everyone
indeed.
wants to work in Brazil.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So, matter of fact, you've been watching Brazilian and Latin markets for almost a decade now. So my take is just, let's take a deeper dive into this. Let's talk about what actually makes a difference there. What are the main pain points whenever someone from Europe is trying to do business, and why we're seeing some companies go heavily with a good hit or they fail completely. So let's try to understand that a bit based on your experience.
I always thought about it, and I always had a very, very solid stance about it. Regarding Brazil, I give the example as the United States of America. The way it's composed, it's a state-based country with multiple cities of different sizes and subcultures and cultural differences. Let's put it that way, and it requires attention. I like to say that, for example, a player better in São Paulo doesn't have the same habits as someone that plays in Porto Alegre, let's say, or even in the far northeast. So everything needs to be taken into consideration. Everything needs to be taken individually when it comes to, okay, me as a foreign company, let's say a platform provider, I'm going to Brazil, but where am I going to in Brazil? Based on where I want to go, what are the things that I need to have in mind in terms of, how people do business there from the moment that you will go and sit and start setting partnerships to the end user. You need to be very, very diligent with your homework, like I like to say it. And piggybacking of what you said, some companies fail because they don't take that into consideration. With all due respect, they go based on their success in different regions that somehow they had things in common, but Brazil is a totally different beast that you need to be paying attention to details.
Yeah, I
People, they need
completely
to be
agree.
detail oriented. Yeah.
And not only that, sometimes it's just not enough to have a good product. You can have the best product on the market, but if your clients or your market does not trust you or doesn't know you, you're gonna have a hard time. It's different than some more pragmatic types of market where if you present the numbers, you present a good product, okay, I'm gonna do it. Here it's completely different. People sometimes they stick with terrible products for years because it's the product that they trust it works. So, having that perception of not only that you need to not only see Brazil. Brazil is not a Portuguese speaking LATAM. Brazil is Brazil. It's massive. It's giant. And inside Brazil, there are so many little countries or regions or states,
Yeah.
and they behave really differently, really different. And then when you start to understand that, you see that not only you need to prepare your product to fit the market, but also your culture to fit how they deal with business.
Indeed.
At least that's every time that someone asks me around, that's the first thing that I need to understand. And
To what you're saying, it's in Rome be Roman. I mean, always be a guest, always go, observe, communicate, adapt, and then in the end of the day, try to find a way to transpose your product, but in a language that the natives will understand. It doesn't make Brazilians more complicated or less complicated. It's just different. And differences are what companies that in the end they thrive, they are able to eat and digest. And then, okay, now, and it's even good for a culture of a company that can tell you, we did amazing business in Asia, or like we did in Europe, like we did in Africa, and like we did in Brazil or in other Latin American countries. This diversity brings brings a very brings wealth to the complexity brought by the market.
then everyone that gets to know this little things about different regions just start for more in love about the people, about the culture, and they start to understand. And sometimes, and in most cases, not even a matter of doing heavy product adaptations or changing. It's just a matter of how you say things, how you put these little small things that you earn your clients or your target clients trust. And this is small that they feel that you care, that if you're not trying to push over, you're trying to be a bully or that you know better than them.
Yeah.
And then when you do the small adjustments, it's just open so many doors.
I've even
That's
seen
why
to what you're saying, which is 1,000% correct. I've even seen, some professionals of iGaming trying to be diligent, going to Brazil, actually moving there, trying to learn the language. But above everything, it's not the language, it's the cultural language that you need to understand. It's where you are, where you want the base of your business to be, where is your target, and everything needs to be studied. And I'm a firm believer that studying is still a great thing, regardless of the realm or the age of things.
Agree. And at least from what we've been through many companies, and I guess most of them, every company looks at Brazil and looks at them, I want to be there, I want to be there. But in your opinion, what is like the most common mistake that they make when they try to enter LATAM?
They focus on the success of their product, of their existing product, which I cannot blame. No company I cannot blame, no executive. If it has worked in 75, 85% of the world, numbers usually don't lie. I mean, it's normal that you think, that you believe that going to Brazil, it will work, but not necessarily for all the reasons we have already mentioned. And I think it's a lesson that is being learned slowly as it is, but realistically speaking, companies are starting to really understand that Brazil is the United States of America in terms of complexity, in terms of potential, in terms of everything amazing and everything bad. It needs a specific attention. You cannot generalize when you go to a country like Brazil with
I
such a
agree.
beautiful history, so diverse, in terms of who got there first, who implemented this. It really requires time and patience, I would say.
Yeah, and knowledge as well. I guess studying is a big part of, and you brought this up perfectly. Because, for example, Brazil is a new regulated. We are almost 1.5 years since we have the regulations live, and I will not even get started on talking about regulations because this would lead us to another 1 hour of episode just talking about regulations.
Indeed.
Anyone that had done business in Brazil knows how regulations are not only specific for our gaming, but labor law, company law, tax law. It's such a minefield that, everyone should be careful when dealing with this. We have this really well made regulation. Kudos to everyone that was part of the process, because if you look at the laws and regulations live in Brazil, they're really well made. Of course, a lot of room for improvements, but now we are on the phase of enforcing it, and still we have this regulatory not safe enough. At least the feeling that the operators have is, even though things are, worded in law, they're not safe. Who would tell us what's going to happen? We have elections this year. We have the World Cup this year. So for me, this year is going to be a big task for the iGaming here in the region. A lot of stuff going on. We look like we are the favorite demon for everyone to blame the faults of the of the universe is all fault of gaming.
That's
That's the thing that you still need to understand that and why they're blaming, and that's a really heavy cultural study that you need to do and why they're blaming, and filter all that noise, and stick on doing this really good work on moving forward, following the regulations, trying to see where they're going to lead in the future and predict how your business can survive these regulations. And the companies that are fine in that way, they're being heavily successful. Heavily. Those who are doing a poor job, they're failing and they will continue to fail.
yeah. I totally agree with you, and I do think that sometimes it's that stubbornness that can lead you to amazing things, but at the same time, it should always, in the Brazilian case, it should always put you in the perspective that, okay, now it's time for me to sit. Let me revisit, not the product, let me revisit the way I'm going about my product. Let me tropicalize it, like they like to call it.
Exactly.
Let me make it more Brazilian and attractive, because that's the way it is. I mean, we can sit here for hours talking about products that they work in the US, but they don't work in Europe, and vice versa. Exactly because of that. Not because of the product, but the stubbornness when it comes to convey and relay the message that no, this product, no. You go to a different place and you have a different target audience. That different target audience, the bigger the country is, the more challenging it is due to its
Yeah.
complexity. So yeah.
Yeah. And that is was just us focusing on Brazil. And then when you look at LATAM, it's this same story, but then it's way different. LATAM is not just Spanish speakers. You have Argentina, which is completely different from Chilean, then it's different from Mexico, then it's different from Guatemala, Honduras, Ecuador. It's way different. In every single country, it will vary a little bit. As you can imagine, cultures are different, relationships are different there. So it's a hard, it's not easy market. It's a weird market. It's not as simple as most people think. But I guess one thing that we can both agree here is there's one thing that is, for me, is the most important thing when dealing with Brazilian LATAM clients, which is trust. And how do you build that trust with those? And how do you make relationships with people? And not only I know that guy. I know that guy is really shallow here in Brazil, but when you
Yeah,
say like I know that,
yeah.
then you are into something. My take is let's jump a little bit on this relationship trust. How can you build them? How can you manage those? And how does that affect different segments of a gaming in the region?
You cannot build a house from the ceiling. You got to build it ground up. So the thing is, always introduce yourself. Always, what I like about LATAM in general, but the Brazilian culture, which we're talking specifically right now, it's the fact that people, they shake their hands and they look each other into the eyes, and you feel the vibration. You feel where that relation can be exploited. I think in Brazil, you start first personally. You go that 10-15% personally, and then you deep dive into business. If you go the other way around, it can be a little bit awkward. You know, we are in the AI era, but I think, countries like Brazil is one of those countries that human relationships will be forever valuable, because that's the algorithm of the country for everything. To have a drink, to watch a football game, to sign a contract, everything is done in a very organic way by sitting next to each other and chit chatting. There's nothing wrong with chit chatting. The so called
We
ice
like to
breaking.
talk.
We love to talk, don't we? We love to talk. Why? Because through communication, we get to know each other. And by getting to know each other, when it comes to business, we get to know what's your need versus what I have to deliver. Because there's a lot of times that some, some salespeople, they're very adamant on presenting the product without even knowing what's the need. So sometimes I think the biggest weapon of communicating is just active listening. You introduce yourself, you say where you're coming from, and then you let the person in front of you talk. And that person will let you know what exactly it's the need at that moment, or for the business or whatever. And in business, it's super, super needed. You need to listen, especially when you come from abroad, especially when you want to make money somewhere else. Enter, remove your shoes, and listen. Doesn't cost a thing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. People sometimes wonder how can you connect people? I cannot make good connections, and it's simpler than there's not much magic to it. It's just approach someone, be polite, educate, ask how they are doing, listen, talk, and that's the beginning. Yes, and it's different from a lot of other regions where you first they wanted to know who you are and where you work,
Yeah,
and then maybe they'll decide if they talk to you.
yeah,
But in the region, we just approach trying to know the person before the business. That's always a good starting point. And
yeah.
then from there on, just let
Things, they
you
just
feel the
develop
vibe.
organically. You feel the vibe, exactly. You, you, you run with the wave.
Exactly. And on the relationship stress and the long game, on your experience, Eddie, what do you think that can keep a client for 5 years and one thing that will lose a client in 3 months?
Personally, wherever I went, wherever I represented, whoever I sat with, setting the right expectations. Always. Do not be too in a rush to tell them that you can deliver a product in a month when you know that it can be shy to a month and a half. Always under promise and over deliver. That's how you build trust from ground up. Everything else just comes naturally and organically.
I
That's my take on
completely
it.
agree. And a lot of cases I saw this people come with big talks and try to lure the client in, and they lure with big, and then that lasts 3 months, and then it's gone. And for you,
Acquisition, without, sorry for interrupting, but just adding, acquisition sounds good, sounds fun, but the real reason why you will acquire and retain people is how you will retain the clientele you already have. Because especially in a market like Brazil, that the news they spread. People most likely, I'll go to you, Felipe. I was like, Felipe, you're using Tim as a carrier. I'm in Claro. I've heard that you at Tim, like, you get very well treated. There's an initiative program that they call you, they ask how are you. So this type of treatment it spreads. It's contagious almost when someone is well treated, when someone is well catered to. And I do believe that speaking now where the market is going, how the market is growing with all its pain, I do believe that companies, B2C, let's talk about an operator, let's talk about a platform, just cater more to your existing clientele. By them, you will know how to improve your product and how to avoid get your clients poached. Because if you have a good relationship, let's say you have a good account manager, all right, that is in constant communication with, let's say, with the players if it's an operator, or with the partners if it's a B2B company. If you get to a point that trust is there and you have a very, very solid relationship, you not only most likely made a friend, but that same client or that same partner will tell you, listen, maybe I should tell you that I have the competition trying to poach me because of this, this, and that. And looking inside will give you the insight for the outside of what's happening without you having to do gap analysis regarding your competitors and to be totally almost obsessive about what's happening in others' gardens. Just by communicating with your client, you will get into the algorithm, and it's going to be very healthy because you'll always be proactive instead of being reactive.
How many times we saw good product directions coming exactly from the client feedback? They're the ones putting your product to the test and facing them to the audience. So listening to the client and trying to differentiate, understanding the client that they're presenting your product and the results that they are getting, then it will vastly differentiate from markets. So it's going to be way different. But you mentioned two things that I want to talk about, and two really important words that for some people are just everything, but for some others, just a part, which is acquisition and retention. Right now for Brazil, where do you think is the real money? Is it still acquisition, or we are going to retention phase?
Definitely retention, especially the regulation brought that. I say that before regulation, let's do it, like before Christ and after Christ. Let's do before regulation and after regulation. So before regulation, you had tens of thousands of operators. That's their only agenda in the market was, let me get the players. I don't care much about retaining them. I just want them to deposit as much as they can. I'm not even concerned on how many bonuses I'm going to give. I'm just focused that my product is the best. So now, okay, fair enough. Now with the regulation, tables turned, because now you want your player to come back. You want your player to be almost a member of your family. You want to check how is he doing. You want to make sure that if he hasn't deposited in a few days, that you send him a reminder with a 100% bonus up to whatever amount. Some companies, they're even bolder. They create VIP programs that they will invite you, the player, plus your wife for a nice weekend or to watch a football game in the stadium. So I think the bread and butter right now, and some companies, they're already realizing it. Of course, you have companies that they think faster than others because their culture, it's more to retaining. Other companies are trying to follow suit. So I think we are in a moment that retention is where the money resides, is to utilize as much as you can your player and make sure that you have and that he has a good experience mutually. Especially with something that I really appreciate these days, which is the different initiatives they're going about responsible gambling. It's very, very important to have these tools because you don't want to overburn a player. A player is a human being after all. Everyone is here to make money. There's no perfect product that will not be a liability for a user or consumer. However, I do see that in Brazil, they're putting a lot of effort to make sure they educate the players. Education is a very important word when it comes to having your player aware of the pros and the cons of using this specific product within the iGaming realm. So definitely
Okay,
retention, actually answering to your question.
100% on board. On the
And
education topic,
sorry for interrupting, just to add,
go ahead.
as we've mentioned before, a proficient retention acquisition will be as organic as your thirst. It will be water. So you don't even have to be very much concerned about going and acquiring new players if you're leaving yours disregarded.
Yeah, and there's one thing that works great, and we are talking exactly about that, and that's not only about between business, it's the trust between your user base as well. because the client will refer you to another client if you're doing a good job to him. He'll mention that he opened a new bet on a new sport or in the World Cup on their account, and then maybe he will attract one other client because you treat the client right. They will bring others to you as well. So
Indeed.
retention is also a really good strategy of acquiring on markets where trust is the king. In LATAM, Brazil, trust is the king. From business to brands to each other, trust is the king. And I guess, as you mentioned, in VIP, the relationship that you have with your client is the product itself. It's the most important thing that people need to take care of. It's not just about sending bigger bonuses. It's how you treat your clients, how can you give them good experience, how can your
And in
brand relate to the client.
a country like Brazil, where human interactions are very important, this should definitely be transposed to business. This should be definitely know your client first. Be there for your client first before showering him with bonuses and all types of rewards. I do think that it falls into what I said initially. Build the house ground up. This is the way to go about. Yeah.
And with care, as you mentioned, education of players within responsible gaming is such a huge topic in Brazil. It's such a huge topic for everyone in the market right now. Because what happened, we have the regulations when going live 1.5 years ago, but we had the iGaming boom before that. And we are still feeling the effects of that because it was such a crazy exposure from
So fast.
everyone. It
Yeah.
was so fast and so uneducative because we had these black market operators, these unlicensed operators, just caring about getting their clients and get their share. Fair enough. But at least my take is that caused the lack of this gap of regulation where we had permission to have gambling here in Brazil, the gaming industry, until we had the regulation, has caused this really huge uneducation of the more vulnerable population, where they are not educated, they are not, and they still see iGaming not as entertainment. They sometimes see it as a way of getting rich or doubling their salary. And that's a bridge because no serious and regulated operator will want an addicted client, because then that's a client that will just vanish and never come back.
Indeed.
And that's a part of the trust, part of taking care of the industry. And
Yeah.
now I'm just curious because I know I'm gonna ask because I know there's gonna be a good story behind this. But if you can remember one client that you almost lost and then you won it back, how did you manage to do it?
Wow, I have a very, very good story. I'll just leave the names out for
Of
for
course.
integrity purposes. But actually, they're very big in Brazil. This I can tell you. And right now, I can tell you that they're top 10 in the regulated market. They're a tier 1 operator. So I was catering to their account. They had a few complaints about, like things being integrated or not, timelines, so on and so forth. And I knew that they had potential. I felt it. I felt, by my interaction with them, they were not very lectured in the online, but I could feel that they were very financially predisposed to take the risk. Mind you, we're talking before regulation. And they came to me. They were like, Eddie, listen, we want to leave the platform because we feel that there's another operator or two that are taking more attention than us, and we really want to grow. And I do think that we can go somewhere else where we can take where we can be taken more seriously. That's where exactly their words. And me, first thing that I do, I want to understand where the thoughts are coming from, because it can be something that the feeling started while I was there, or it's something that could have started before. And I love to know the whole context before I have an opinion, before I give you an advice. So I asked them, like, guys, can you tell me, like, where is this coming from before? Because yesterday everything was fine, and I just want to see how I can exactly assist you. And they were telling me the story that somehow, some situations a few months back, they felt that they were not being taken care seriously. And I told them, guys, listen, what I can do for you is I'll take your feedback right now, and by all means, I will take it to the people that can take the decisions in this matter, and give me 2-3 days and make sure that I'll be back to you. All right. And mind you, at this stage, they already told me that they wanted to launch a new brand because they had
Mhm.
partnered with a huge influencer / singer, and they were really keen to pursue that venture, but they were not sure if they wanted to stay in the same platform for all the concerns already mentioned. So I went to the Mount Olympus, like I called it. I went, met with the directors and a few of the C-suits. And I told them, guys, these guys are leaving and they're not bluffing. Oh, but like they were not from Brazil, so they thought, that the client was kind of, bargaining, and he was doing this because he wanted some counterparties. And I told him, guys, respectfully, with my knowledge of the culture, the knowledge of the language, and the way he told me things, they will leave without saying goodbye. They'll not even pay the last invoice. So here's the agenda that they want to stay. And if things, are agreed, they will launch the new brand with us. So long story short, back and forth for a week and a half, 2 weeks, I managed to have them stay, and they brought the new brand that is now, tier 1, top 10 in the regulated market. So this is my most, proud moment. Obviously, this was a fantastic company effort. Everyone had to sit and think how to prioritize this without disregarding the other clients. But in the end, we did it. And this where what we've been talking about, it's trust. It's, I asked a question, I active listened, I took the notes, I went to whom of right, told him, listen, this can happen if we don't act immediately. And from that point onwards, I can tell you that it was a very organic effort
Yeah.
from everyone. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Kudos to
that's
the
a
company.
feeling. Well, kudos to you as well. But that's a feeling where it can happen, and sometimes it's almost invisible to a couple of people that come from Europe trying to work in Brazil. Is that sometimes they feel that if you don't listen to them, like if they are not taking you serious, they will see that he thinks they are superior than us. They think they are better than us. And it's never a really healthy relationship in a business when you have one part feeling that they're way better than the other, or if they're feeling that they're worse. They'll try to find someone who will do listen to them, will treat them as an equal, as a friend, as a colleague, as a partner. And that uh, huge emphasis on being a partner, that is really important when dealing with clients, not only in Brazil, of course, but that has this special, is like really singular, really thin way that you need to treat people or be caring with them, warm with them, on listening to them. Sometimes it's not even a product question. Sometimes it's just about the feeling. Sometimes it's just about being listened to, or sometimes just that they need to put out something. And then
The
by
sense, Felipe,
listening,
the sense of support. Everyone
yeah,
loves to be supported somehow. Not everyone asks it, not everyone thinks they need it, but it comes to a point that you need support. And once you're paying for a product that comes with support and comes with all the things that you're paying for, I do believe that foreign companies in Brazil trying to enter Brazil, they need to be more conscious and more sensitive about this because it can be
yeah,
offensive. Some ways it's an example that I always give. We don't do business in Japan like we would do in Brazil or in Europe. Every single cultural table has a different way to go about business. Some cultures you drink first and then you do business. Some cultures you don't drink at all until you complete the business. Just an example, just a very normal
yeah.
example.
And we do like to
Yeah,
drink anyway.
we do. We're not going to lie about that.
That's amazing. We've been to at least first trying to understand the uniques of Brazil at the market. We've been to trust, which is much important in the region. Now, let's try to understand a little bit more about what the market really wants right now. More specifically, what Brazilian and LATAM operators want right now. We know it's not about the past, it's not about the regulations. How and not only what they say that they want, but what do, in your opinion, what the Brazilian and the Latam operators need right now on a product direction, really. It's either whatever direction you want to go, but more broad on what they want.
I get you. It's simple. It's performance. Having in mind that the market share, let's say that 3 years, 4 years ago, we had tens of thousands of operators. Now we are limited to, I don't know, 200 something operators. And most of the operators are in 1 or 5 platforms. What is required right now is performance. Companies, platforms, they need to invest in muscle. They need to inject muscle into the platforms because we're talking about a lot of people. Brazil is a 200 plus million country in terms of population. And now specifically, we're talking about the World Cup in less than 1 month. They even projected that there's a 13% of additional gamblers that will start playing right now just because of the World Cup, just for giggles, just because they want to be part of all the excitement. And so performance is of rule. It's almost of law right now. And again, some companies, they're excelling, some others not really. And we don't have to wait for the World Cup to improve performance. This is something that we should be benchmarked. This something should be basic because it's a very, very interesting market right now, having in mind that you have not many players when it comes of, the operators playing in the market, but they're very strong with a lot of financial willingness to invest in marketing, to invest in all kinds of initiatives you can think so they can make their brand thrive. So yeah, definitely performance with a capital P.
I agree. 100% on board. And, we already have these big operators right in the country, but there's still some which have not set foot here. And when they come, they will come with the big pockets.
Yeah.
Those that perform, those that connect the best with their audiences are those the ones are gonna stick. My real take is that the World Cup is gonna be the biggest sport event for the modern iGaming era, at least here in Brazil. It's gonna be a good test and a good show of what the industry can be. The numbers are going to be sky high. Everyone's going to be moving like crazy. But then we'll need to see the aftermath of that. We're going to retain those players. How can they keep them connected? And how going to keep those players performing inside their platforms, without dropping or moving to the black market. And the black market, even we are regulated, we have such good players on the regulated market. We have estimations that around half of the Brazilian market is still on the black market.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, it's always a red flag when you need to see, how can the government stop seeing the iGaming industry as the enemy and work together with the regulated companies for a better environment for the players.
They need to understand that iGaming landed in Brazil to stay. Either the government treats it as something regulated that through the taxes that are paid, it can enrich the country in so many different ways, or if the government decides to neglect it, the black market will still exist and there's nothing that can be done about it. So it's either or.
Yeah, I agree. And when we talk about loyalty, and it's a huge topic across every country, it's always different from each country. But for you, loyalty in LATAM is just about giving the better bonus, or is more about real connections with the players, or different ways of doing it? What do you think is loyalty?
Real connection or loyalty comes with trust. If I trust you, I'll be loyal to you. If you give me a reason to trust you, then let's deep dive into iGaming. If I feel that you are catering to my behavior as a player, for the good and for the bad. If I'm betting a lot, send me a nice message saying something about it. If I'm not betting that much, incentivize me, but don't put me in a predicament. So it's very important the communication that the operator has with the player. It's very, very important. That's what will make the difference in 5-10 years of who is going to stick with operator A or B. Everyone feels that they matter, and we all matter in the end of the day. But once we're using a product, once we're going, depositing, using it for entertainment as it is, that's the prerogative behind iGaming. Guys, full disclaimer, gambling is entertainment. And that's it. You need to have all the mechanisms in place to retain and not overburn your player. And all that comes with the trust that is built with a set of mechanisms that will consequently get to loyalty. If I trust you, I'll be loyal to you. As simple as that.
Yeah, and And that goes from brands to persons to VIP managers, and from even to client to client. If they trust, they have the brand, they will speak the good word. Especially, for example, when we see the movers of the market in a global scale, and we see companies like, for example, Optimove, they just partnered with Salsa Technologies, the first big Brazilian platform integration. And the main thesis that they brought up is that they're bringing this predictive, generative, and agentic AI, which is the hot word of the year. Everyone wants the AI something inside the operation. They're moving and focusing those efforts on enabling operators to go from acquisition led to retention led. So I guess that, at least for me, gives me signs of what is happening across the industry. If one of the biggest CRM companies, when they focus in Brazil on bringing the retention, that sends out a warning sign. Do you think that's really is where the demand is? Finding more ways to retain players, better ways, being more performance based on your retention as well?
That's definitely the way to go. CRM will allow you to do something very basic and elemental for the sake of your operation success, which is knowing your player. Through efficient reporting, you will know who is who has this certain types of habit, who plays at this certain time, who play. That information intel is gold. The moment that a company like Salsa partners with a company like Optimove, that means one thing. They want to definitely differentiate themselves from every other competitor.
Yeah, agree. And that's the way, that's the way moving forward. Sending a bonus, sending an SMS, saying completely generic things are showing that they're less and less effective in the region. As these companies that want to strive for years in the market, they need to, one, know their players exactly, and then relate to them. Try to have this open brand to person relationship and make them like a brand, have a brand and relate that brand to your audience. You're not going to have a brand that just caters for every audience and every player. So find your niche, find your players, find your ways of communicating, and that will get you your players that are going to
And
stick
stick
and
to
be
it.
loyal to your platform.
Be patient. Be patient. Stick to your strategy. Don't get desperate because you feel that the acquisition, even after the World Cup, operators, if something doesn't reflect in terms of numbers, no, just take the best out of it and, keep going forward. Because obviously we know the top 3, top 5 that will really capitalize because now it's all about marketing. Now it's all about campaign activation, especially in Brazil. Brazil is going to be, it's the place to be for the World Cup. Not even the United States of America. I can imagine all the giant screens they're going to put everywhere, a shower of brands everywhere doing their activation promotions, selling one, giving two, or giving five, and then the next purchase you don't pay for. It's going to be amazing to be in Brazil right now. And I think now it's going to be a lesson for everyone. And I do think that now iGaming will go from playing checkers, meaning act and react, and go to the chess plateau where people will have to think more strategically. At every move, they'll need to anticipate every third, fourth, fifth move in advance. And I think it's a good turnkey
Agree?
to the market
Agree
right now.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that, this just naturally connects with one of my favorite topics, because one thing is that, we just spoke about having these promotions, having these campaigns, having those everythings, but there's one special thing that I like, not just for a gaming, but most people either will 100% rock it right and have great success, or they'll completely fail, which is influencers, streamers, celebrities,
Yeah.
brand ambassadors. A lot of companies don't understand how effective or how big are those guys here in Brazil.
Yeah.
So for you, is connecting with these influencers the way forward, or is just already something that was just hype and no results?
It will always be the way forward. And the results were massive and they still massive. And even in Brazil, we have several cases of people that started by becoming brand ambassadors themselves, influencers or streamers or how you want to call them. And eventually they ventured into having their own operation. You have several cases in Brazil. So you can see how it was impactful for everyone. Even the influencer himself wasn't believing in how influential he was going to be in iGaming. You know what I mean? So what I can tell you is that for the sake of a fair play and a more loyal competition amongst the different operators in Brazil, some regulations will have to come to place. Because not every operation has money to go and, you know, purchase the span of attention of a specific influencer that has specific following. You know what I mean? And there are several companies, and we're going to talk about one specific company very soon that can do the same, or at least in terms of conveying the message, but not necessarily using a human being, you know, like, and I'm very curious. It's not that I want to ask you a question right now, but you know
We'll
how
get
much
there.
Trueplay fascinates me as, you know, as a product. And, you know, when the time comes, let's get into it.
Yeah, but
But again, the influencer market will always be there. It will be tweaked here and there, depending on the future regulations. Again, Brazil is a country that is maturing in terms of regulation. What was true yesterday doesn't mean that it's going to be true in a week. So everything will need to be very an open heart surgery type of detailing and type of patience.
yeah, I agree. And if you look like historical numbers and not just across the game, and if you look at how influenceable are the audience here in Brazil, Brazil ranks, I think, is in top three countries where the influencers have power over the consumer decisions. They really do act as influencers of opinion, of purchase, of habits, of what they're doing. They dictate what's hot, what's cold, what's cool, what's not. And we have two great examples here in Brazil on Pragmatic with Gate of Olympus and PG Soft with Fortune Tiger, where they become popular games, or the Velho do Raio, which means old guy with the lightning, and Tigrinho, which is the little tiger. Those run on the popular mouth and got absurdly popular.
They became so trendy and so hot that they even feature in music lyrics. It's crazy.
And that's
I could tell you off the rip, you know, 10, 15 songs that has Tigrinho, you know, like.
yes, and it's crazy. Sometimes people don't understand, and that goes a long way of convincing people to playing your games, and they're gonna stick with playing. Because when people get the habit of playing some games, they'll just stick with what they know. It's gonna be really hard for you to convince them otherwise, and that's why the influencers play such a big role, because they have that power. They have the power to dictate what's being cool, what's being not on their niche audiences. And that's sometimes people just don't understand. They still think that if they come with this cool product or with this cool game, people will just play it. Oh, I'm gonna label this game Caipirinha Samba because Brazil loves Caipirinha and Samba. And then it just will fail.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going to be my point, Felipe. You made a very, very good point right now that I will just, you know, without cutting your train of thought. You would think that due to the influence of the influencers, the influence they have over the trends and over what's hype and what's not, you would think that Brazilians are, you know, they would be an easygoing and very easy, relatable clientele. But not at all. What they like, they like. What they don't like, they don't like.
True. So true. So true.
Yeah.
And just want to push it forward. So yeah, of course we have social media streamers, but there is one niche category of streamers that I personally do love, and I spend most of my time watching, and which is streamers. And at least I saw so many companies trying it. Everyone, well, I want to try streamers. I want to have streamers. I want to. Streamers is the future. Streamers king. Streamers, well, the new crawl of the Joe of the crawl. Yeah. Uh, and then either they go and hit really good numbers or they fail. There's still a lot of fake viewers, botted communities, a lot of scam. Is not an easy industry to work with. But do you think that streaming specifically? Let's go into streaming, not to go about influencers and wrestlers and so on. But is it like a future area or future niche for a gaming, or just hype? Or sometimes it will work, sometimes it will fail. What do you think?
I think it's the present already. And let me elaborate around that. And mind you, piggybacking on what you said, that some are failing. You need to find the right streamer that conveys the right information that represents your company. You cannot, if your whole operation, your whole betting site has a specific message, and then you get a streamer just because he's hyped and he has all these numbers, but it doesn't speak the same language of your clientele, there's no point. It conflicts. That's one of the reasons of failing. But going back to what you're saying, yes, it is the present. It will more and more be the future. But again, I do believe, based on how regulation is being dealt in Brazil, it's dynamic. It's multiple states and Senate and government, a lot of people making decisions. I think it will suffer some regulations
For the good.
for the good, mainly on the tone of the messaging, mainly on if the tone of the messaging really represents the betting company. Let's not forget that an operator is a company still. A company needs to rule themselves by values, by morals, and by culture. So I think the focus will be there. I think companies will be way more conscious when it comes to, oh, let me make sure I'll pick the right streamer or the streaming service that I can control my company's narrative as much as possible, not to become a liability. Because, they're kids in the end of the day. Let's talk about a few of the streamers. They're kids. They're not fully formed in terms of maturity. They can make a silly mistake that can jeopardize a whole brand. And no one wants to go through that. And I do think that companies and regulations will come together more to mitigate this type of predicaments.
Yeah, no, at least to keep building on what you started. So not only that, not only you need to find the right streamers, but you need to keep them on board. And it's been harder and harder and harder for the operators because they're getting more expensive and more expensive and more expensive every day. You agree with the streamer for, I don't know, a 500,000 per month contract. Well, the next day they get, oh, but the operator X offered me double. You're like,
Yeah.
what? You don't make that much money for the brand. Why they're offering you double? Because they want. Because they want me, they're offering. And then you see brands overpaying for influencers just because they
Yeah.
want market share. So that's a trap where even brands, they need to beware and be careful to not over expand on influencers that have low resonation with their brands or the direction that they want the brand to have in the country.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll spend a lot on an influencer because he had good numbers, but it doesn't really resonate with the brand, and then the streaming results start to go down, and they will be unhappy with your brand and want to move forward or to another one. So we have streamers and influencers are a big part of that. They're getting more expensive. What's the tech behind it? But we spoke before that AI is everywhere, and now we might be seeing AI entering streaming as
Yep.
well. Do you think an AI streamer would actually help on the region? Will players accept an AI host, or the human counterparty here is way more important than having an AI? Or do you think it would be possible for people to start to resonate or connect with even with an AI streamer? Let's say, put it this way.
Yeah, definitely. We are an avant-garde society. Things that we said 20 years ago that we wouldn't be doing today, we're doing today. We spend most of our time on our phones. Who would tell that, that it would be better to go and play football for hours, and after that football, sit with the friends and talk for more hours. And who would say that fast forward 20, 30 years, we would be on our phones? So impossible is nothing. Let's put it that way. Again, the communication and the way you will set up these AI, because that's for me, that's the most interesting part, is that you can set your own narrative through your AI streamer. You can literally program it. You can literally make him say what you want him to say. You can literally give him the personality. So it's how relatable the character built from company A will satisfy the needs of the operator. I think it's great because it will bring, let's say, a company like, let's talk about this company, Trueplay. Trueplay will have a way bigger proximity with a platform or with an operator, because now they'll need to sit and okay, let's now think of how can we make your brand bigger. Trueplay, what's the type of possibilities you give me when setting up AI streamer? It's great. I think it's great for the partnership. I think it's great for the communication. I think it's only pluses coming from that.
if you look at, for example, and taking it from other industries, if you look at, and if you go look, who is the most influential virtual influencer? Who has the most followers being a virtual influencer is a character that does not exist. And it's from a Brazilian company, which is Ludo Magalu, which is Magazine
Okay.
Luiza, which is like a local Brazilian Amazon. They created this virtual avatar with, they'll do unboxing, they'll do product experiences, they'll do social media content, and she became the most followed virtual influencer in the planet. So it's a matter of strategy. It will not work for everyone. It will not be for everyone
For
just gonna
everyone.
plug and play an AI. Okay, now it will have great results. But as a part of a strategy, I think it can help alleviate some of the issues that we're seeing. Not only is gonna be
If well
safe,
executed, definitely. If well executed,
yeah.
definitely.
And I always surprise me with the quality and the creativity of Brazilians and Latin people overall, because I'm
Very
sure they'll
resourceful.
create them. They are really resourceful. And if you give them the tools to create AI avatars to be streamers live or doing iGaming content, they will find some really interesting ways on doing that. So I'm eager
Yeah.
to see the
Me too,
direction.
to be fair with you. I always tell everyone around me that doesn't speak Portuguese how they're not utilizing the internet as they should. Because if they knew Portuguese, they would understand that there's a way funner, a way more entertaining internet. You know, like in terms of the creativity, the resourcefulness of Brazilians to create content, it's never seen. It's never seen. It's so exciting that sometimes you're sitting next to someone that doesn't understand. You're grabbing everything. Listen, let me translate it to you because this, you cannot find this content in any other language made by any other nationality. Respectfully, you
Yeah,
know.
I agree. I agree. This was such a good topic. We could go easily, for me at least, we could go another 3 hours just speaking about
Likewise,
influencers
likewise.
and creators and so on.
Uh,
But we are coming to such a long episode right now that we should try to land this plane, and maybe we'll set up some topics for our next episode. It'll be a pleasure to have you again. So first, Eddie, thank you so much for being here.
I
Let's just
appreciate you.
close it this with some ping pong questions or rapid fire. One word for you. LATAM, I gave 2026. What?
Maturing.
Okay,
Yeah,
good one. Good one. Why?
yeah. A lot of things happening. The way the market got regulated with barely no foundations, things changing at the speed of light. I do think it's going to be like that for quite some time. But again, when you go forward, you mature. So I do believe that tomorrow will be better than yesterday.
For me, the word and almost the same idea, but on a different perspective. For me, it's gonna be a test. This year, 2026, and the next one is gonna be a test, not only for the regulated market, but also for the regulator itself and the industry as a whole. We will need to find a way to work together for a healthy and long ongoing gaming industry in Brazil. If either side of that pulls too strong, if the regulator overregulates, if the industry start moving the other direction, then that rope is gonna break, and then we're gonna have this rupture on people just flooding the black market, and that's
Yeah,
not good for anyone. So for me, it's gonna be a huge test this next 2 years on the people that are doing their good jobs, the serious ones, the ones that takes this industry and this market as it should, with responsibility, with respect, they're gonna succeed. Those are which are not ready for this, those are not doing this good job, those are not preparing enough, being respectful, they will fail. It's gonna be a huge test. We'll see.
yeah, definitely.
So if anyone wants to reach out to Eddie just to talk or to know more about you, where they can find you.
They can find me on LinkedIn, Édi Varela. That's how I can be found. And I'm more than happy to have these productive conversations because I do think that this type of communication is what's modernized, it what's enriches any type of industry, especially our iGaming industry that is so dynamic and so rich of everything. Yeah.
Mate. Brother, I will call you brother because
You're my
you
brother.
are.
Come on. We
This
are
was
brothers.
such a huge pleasure. to have you here. I guess it's like doing the small ant work. We need to take crumbles and crumbles and crumbles of trying to make and help people to understand, because that's what in the end what we really want is people to understand how to operate here. Because the more people are competent enough and knowledgeable enough to how to operate in Brazil like them, we're gonna have a better market. More people working here with good thinking, we're gonna just improve the market, improve the industry, improve the quality, and keep moving forward in a healthy way. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your experience across many different tables, many different topics. Any closing thoughts? Anything that you want to sign off with?
Yes, to our audience, if there's someone struggling to enter the market, if there's someone in the market but they think that they're not in the right place, they need to be patient. The cultural differences are not only for the way you say hi and the way you say bye, it's for the ways you say you do business. And in the end of the day, there's nothing, you're not right, you're not wrong. You just need to be attentive, and you need to be mindful that you're communicating with a different type of market that most likely in 10, 15 years will be just another market. But now, this is the moment of getting in and becoming sustainable in Brazil.
Amazing one. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you
Everyone,
guys. Thank you very much for the invite. It's an honor.
this is great. We'll schedule another one. Don't worry.
Hope so.
Everyone, this is True Talks. Hopefully, we shared a little bit of the truth, at least on our experiences. Thank you so much for listening, being here. You can always reach out to Eddie. You can always reach out to me if you want to discuss anything Brazil, Samba, World Cup, Neymar related. We are always there for a drink or just
Yes,
somewhere in the chat. Thank you, and I'll see
indeed.
you next time.
Thank you all. Bye bye.